I've been building recruiting businesses for about 3 decades. I sold one for $28 million, and I help other people to scale their businesses. So like new agency owners don't really think like startups. I niched and I got consistent, and now I do. I have posts at least every day, weekday. And it's been amazing how in my consulting business, I was getting most of my clients through cold outreach. But then once I got consistent, I get income. I get leads all this. Like I already got, what is it? It's 10:30. I've already gotten 3 incoming leads today. Like I would have saved somebody like, I don't know, $20,000 or, whatever, by just sharing some of these scrappier tools.
Hi, I'm Denise Chaffin, and I am the host of Talking TA. And this morning I have with me Diane Prince. And Diane Prince is here in Phoenix with me, and she is the founder of Recruiting Agency 360. And we're going to have a fascinating conversation about applicant tracking systems. And don't yawn, it's going to be interesting. So I will let Diane tell us a little bit more about Recruiting Agency 360, and then we'll get started.
Hey, Denise, thanks for having me on your podcast. So Recruiting Agency 360 is where I teach recruiting agency owners how to stop living placement to placement and get recurring revenue. And I've been building recruiting businesses for about 3 decades. I sold one for $28 million, and I help other people to scale their businesses.
That is fabulous. You and I will have more conversations around that too. What drew me to Diane, though, was a LinkedIn post that she has from a couple of months ago, and it was about applicant tracking systems. I thought it was funny because she started out with saying, do you hate software demos as much as I do? And she kind of launches into, let's see here, having this latest software AI tool is not as important as you may think it is. And then you also talk about, I believe in loving the ATS that you're with. And so when I was reading this article, I thought, wow, this is a very interesting article. Plus, you had another article as well talking about applicant tracking systems. So I wanted to have this discussion with you because it seems like you've done some homework around this. And we as recruiters, I think we've all worked with multiple applicant tracking systems over the years. I know for me, I think the first one I ever worked with was at Motorola. In the 90s, it was called Resumix. I don't even know how long it stayed around. But anyway, I wanted to get your perspective and why did you write this article and kind of what led you to that? And let's start there.
Yeah. And I love hearing like different posts that resonate with different people for all sorts of reasons. So really, I mean, it's funny because it's almost like the topic is almost like a little bit misleading because it's not so much about like people might think, oh, we're going to talk about like, should we go to this ATS or this one? But the reason I wrote a couple of posts is because I see founders really grappling with this and struggling. And one agency owner I worked with changed his ATS 3 or 4 times within the first 45 days. And he ended up really not getting off the ground with his business. And I've been in this business, I think about as long as you have. And it's just such a common recurring theme of changing ATSs and hating your ATS and complaining about it. And I think I told you I was in another industry too when I had my clothing business. It was direct sales, and I saw a similar theme. I went to the Direct Selling Association conference, and it was like I could have been at the SIA or the ASA conferences because it was the same topics as people standing around and complaining about their software. And then I've also seen people build their own software, which is an enormous undertaking and it doesn't always work out that well either.
I appreciate you bringing that up too, because again, while I was working for Motorola back in the 90s, they created their own in-house applicant tracking system. I think it was called Oasis at the time. And I don't know how long they kept it, but I think they had some people who developed it, but then there was nobody to update it or to give it some modifications, things like that. So they wound up later on having to transition over to a commercial product. But for me, I've had the same applicant tracking system for almost 13 years now, and it's a smaller company. I like the one I have because they've allowed us to have a customizable software where we can kind of do what we want with it. Everything's not hard baked in like some of the bigger applicant tracking systems that we tested when we were deciding 13 years ago. To me, I think changing applicant tracking systems would be like moving. There's a lot to pack and a lot of expense, and it's a big deal to change applicant tracking systems. And like you said, the one customer that you had 3 times in 45 days.
It's not even that uncommon. I mean, I think a lot of people do. And when you're talking about, it's like moving, and it even worse than that, because sometimes, if you have a team and you hear people moaning about the ATS or complaining, I think it's important to just realize like that it's just part of it. It's part of our life. And because every time, so for as many complaints as you have with your current ATS, you'll have complaints about implementation. Then you're going to have complaints about your new ATS. I think the decision of which ATS to go to is also probably not as big of a decision as a lot of people think it is.
Why is that?
Well, because most of them are fine. And you can just put I really believe in doing the things that matter. So yes, you have to have tools in place. Some common mistakes that I do see people make, new recruiting agency owners in ATS. One is if they come from talent, they often, not agency recruiting, sometimes they choose ATSs that are more for internal, like Greenhouse or Lever. Those are not for agency. Okay, so like there's ATS that are designed for agency, and that they will realize in that case you are going to need to switch eventually, because it doesn't have the built-in sales functions, it doesn't have CRM, it just doesn't have all the things that we need for agency recruiting. So that's one common thing that I see, and I mean it goes on with other software too. Or sometimes if they come from agency, they might have a really robust, like expensive ATS, and they don't realize that there are more like scrappy, affordable solutions. You don't need to spend thousands of dollars every month. You could get a solution for $99 per user or something like that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different options. So I would look at like startup options, and also specifically for agency. And if you're doing staffing, you want to make sure that it has staffing features and invoicing and things like that, or compatibility. But other than that, like to belabor the decision, I'm always about just get recurring revenue and just work on revenue generating activities and things that are going to move the needle. And these decisions just aren't that, they're just not that important.
And it's interesting you bring that up, because when you look at what you need an applicant tracking system for, I remember we were working for a big data center company, and they switched to Workday. And the reason they did is because Workday had offered them kind of a package, if you would, of a performance management system for their HR side. And then it came along with the ATS. And some people loved it. Some people, it's really funny too, because it's very divided, the opinions on some of these bigger ATS companies. Some people love them, the complexity of them, and other people just absolutely hate it. For me, I like a simpler system. And any of us who've been in this business a long time, we've worked with so many, iSIM, SuccessFactors, Taleo, and again, Workday, and a lot of the other big ones. And we could all probably rank them, and it'd be interesting to know as recruiters how everybody would rank different applicant tracking systems. But like you were saying, though, what do you need it for? Are you an agency? Are you starting up a smaller company that's going to grow? I mean, where you have a product and you're going to need to hire an HR staff, and you're going to eventually need to hire talent acquisition team and that type of thing, then you're going to need an applicant tracking system to function for a different reason than if you're an agency or a smaller company, right? So those are some of the, I think, pieces that people need to look at, right? What do you need it for? For us, we needed it for reporting more than anything else. Our clients wanted data on the job, the people we were recruiting for them, and the projects they had given us, to see what our success rate was and what the return on their investment was in working with us. And so we were able then to customize the applicant tracking system reporting function. And I'll give a shout out to our applicant tracking system company. It's called Tracker RMS. And they're, like I said, a smaller company, but they said, yeah, you've got the flexibility to manage your reporting function however you want to. So that was really super helpful to us. So I'd like to share that because if somebody is starting a new company, because we started in 2013 and I had never purchased an applicant tracking system before. So I think that kind of helps people out too. And what would you say? What would you ask people if you were going to help somebody decide on what type of an applicant tracking system to purchase? What questions would you ask them?
Well, I want to know first of all, what their team looks like, what's their budget is. I mean, it's different if you have a startup you might be solo founder, you have some outsourced recruiters, or you might have a handful of recruiters versus if you're an 8-figure business, that can be different. Not even that many questions. Like I kind of just make it more simple because I think it gets overcomplicated. But even like the customized stuff, because it is like a lot of systems do have things that we can work with. And so, yeah, I just want to know, like, what are your goals? Are you doing, and also if you're just doing direct hire, because I am sort of biased to this because I help people who are just doing permanent placement to build staffing as well. It's not that, again, like not as hard as people think. There's all these like sort of, it seems like sometimes when you're starting your own business, a lot of things seem opaque or overwhelming. And so I like to help people break it down step by step and realize like it's not, at the end of the day, like some of these decisions are not that big of a deal. It's not that serious. What things I would look at though are customer service. You want to always, no matter what vendor or consultant or whatever you're hiring, always check references. Always check at least 3 references that have used the software. And that's going to help you too, especially if you're a new agency owner, you've never bought the software before. So you want to hear what other people have to say. You might hear some other questions. Be prepared, like what kinds of questions to ask. And then also look at this. This came up, which I never even thought of this before, but I spoke to another recruiting agency coach and he was telling me the software, the ATS he was recommending, and I'm not even going to go into details, but my mind was kind of blown. And he was recommending it because he was getting commission. Now, like I'm all for like if you're getting affiliates and things like that, but you have to be transparent about it and offer, like I always offer like the best solution that I can find. But you really kind of want to look at like if you are getting referrals, sort of look at like, is that person financially motivated by giving me this referral? And is this truly the best thing that is going to be the best thing for me?
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that is a good point. You had mentioned a while ago too the difference between, and on that note, the difference between an ATS and a CRM. So explain, if you were to explain to a new client the difference, or finding an applicant tracking system that might also work as a CRM, a better fit for a staffing agency versus a corporate company, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Because like I've had clients who've just started and they weren't really sure. And so they're using like a talent cut like Lever or something like that. And which is more for internal talent. And then agencies, you can invite agencies to use it as they submit candidates, but those don't have, to my knowledge, they don't have CRMs. They're not like, so CRM because with an agency, like in bigger organizations with talent, you have talent and they're using their applicant tracking system, and then sales is separate, and sales is, they're selling whatever their software, whatever it is they're selling. It's not the same, but in an agency, it's basically both. Like you're selling and you're recruiting, and it's this very similar. And some people are doing both. You might have recruiters who are doing both biz dev and recruiting. So it's typically in an agency ATS, you would have a CRM as well, so that you can keep track of your sales contacts, and then you can also see where you've submitted your candidates to with your clients. And it's very much because with recruiting, you can put the pieces together and candidates become clients become candidates. So it's really like you want that whole big picture in a CRM, an ATS that also has a CRM.
And I know though some of the ATS companies though actually have a different fee scale though. If you're going to use their software for both an ATS and a CRM. It's not like it's just one price for both. I think they have it split out. I know that Tracker does. So that's good to know as well, because if you, like you said, if you're just starting out, it's probably important to understand what you need it for first before you purchase different components from an ATS company.
And some, again, how do they interface with your website, or do they have maybe, some of them like have the website feature, and how do they, because you can have job postings on your website, then they go straight into your ATS. And then also like, as you're in the importance of having the ATS/CRM is that you'll have, you'll be able to track previous clients, and you might not even realize it now if you're just starting out, but 5 years from now, you can see then like where is that person going? Like when I was working at a tech recruitment agency kind of recently, and like we had a rule that if a client hasn't been touched by the previous client manager in 3 months, they're open game. I just go through the ATS and find like people who hadn't been touched, see where they were, so there's so much if you use it. And usually, I mean, like with most software, usually a lot of times people don't use all of the features. So that's part of why they think it doesn't work, because I mean, training is so important, and knowing, like really exploiting all of the features that it can do can be really powerful.
Exactly. But yeah, and I like to, when you mentioned in your posting, stick with the ATS that you have versus switching. Because really, what is switching going to do? I mean, you're still going to wind up with some of the same issues that you had from one ATS to the other. I don't know. I mean, are there really that many distinctions outside of, like I said earlier, you've got some ATS companies who, when they sell you their product, everything is baked in there. It's hardwired. So you can't adjust any feature of their software. But then there's others that are going to give you that more flexibility. So what are you going to use it for? But I like the fact that you mentioned there really, other than that, really what differences are there? I mean, some companies, though, are going to use applicant tracking systems to track candidates all the way through the hiring process. And since that's not what we do in our industry, right, in our part of the industry, we don't need that function.
Well, I mean, yes and no, because you do want to be able to track to their placements, right?
Sure,
Especially
exactly.
if you're doing staffing, because you want to know where they're placed.
Right.
And
but
then
the onboarding part of it.
Yeah. And then you also wanted to keep track of the candidates. So like they get placed, and you can have triggers to contact them. And some ATS will have like automated, or they have integrations where you place someone in say it's a direct hire role, permanent placement, you place them in the role, then you get triggered a week later, 3 months later. So because you want to keep in touch with that candidate throughout the life, basically, even if they get placed, I'm big on keeping in touch also with candidates placed from other agencies into, if I've submitted them and then they accept a job through another agency, like I want to keep in touch with them as if I placed them. I've gotten amazing anchor clients that way. So you do really want to keep in touch with them throughout just the whole life cycle of your business or your career.
So now how do you keep in touch with them then? Do you use the ATS, or is the ATS then serving you then to kind of as a reminder, like a CRM would, and then you kind of just contact them directly through LinkedIn?
Yeah. I mean, like some CRMs or ATS/CRM, you can set triggers. Sometimes like if I'm not always that organized, so sometimes I'll be like, okay, let me just, today I'm going to look and see like all my previous candidates. And so you can just look through your ATS and see like where people have been submitted, who I've submitted, and then reach out to them on LinkedIn. Really, like, so much about this business is connecting the dots and following people's paths, seeing where they're at now. If you look through, like, see who I placed last year, make sure that you're in touch with all of those people.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And again, too, like I was saying, from a reporting standpoint, too, having that ability to see who was hired and who might still be in the pending hire process is really good for any ATS. But I guess just from an onboarding perspective, though, some ATSs have a lot more information in there, or a lot more steps, I should say, that a company has to follow for the onboarding piece of it, background checks, and just whatever the new hire boarding process might be for that company. So, and some of those pieces, yeah, we don't need.
No, I mean, often agencies do the background checks, and
Oh, that's true too. Yeah,
so
that's true.
that can be important too. And also, especially like, you also reporting for managing your team. So if you're just starting out as an agency owner, this might not seem important, but then as you grow, it's a way to look at how many submittals does it take you to get to a placement. You can look and see how many submittals each person's made on your team. You can track, what stage the candidate's at. Is it first interview, second interview? You can track how quick companies are to hire. So you can get so much data, not just, it's important to present data. I think you were mentioning to your clients. That's super important, because really one of the things that we can control is how we communicate with our clients. And then also how we're doing, like track internally how we're doing.
Yeah, and time to fill is huge, always, right? From the time you started a project to the time you finish it. Not only that, but I will know one of the features on our reporting for our ATS is future prospects. So that was one of the things that we were able to add as a feature because of just what the type of work that we're doing for our clients, which is mostly staff augmentation. So we've got our recruiters working with our clients directly. And so as they're adding candidates, some of them might not be interested now, that type of thing. So those are always good, especially for a CRM, to go back and find all of your future prospect candidates who might not have been interested 6 months ago, but want to stay in touch. So that's been a huge feature for us, is to have that as an option. And then there was something else, another point that you had brought up as well, about being able to track candidates all the way through the life cycle and all the way for the time that you placed, and to keep track of them, because oftentimes those people are going to keep getting promoted. Like you said, some of them become anchor clients later on. And I mean, how would you recommend if you were going to talk to a client and say, if they ask you, all right, so how often are we supposed to keep track of people or contact people in order to keep a good relationship with them? What would you recommend?
I don't know if there's a magic number to that. I mean, I think the most important thing is just staying in touch. I mean, if it's a prospect, I always say it's more is more, and you can stay in touch with them until they say unsubscribe or no. So I think when the important thing to think about is that when you're staying in touch with someone, you're showing them that you're consistent. So some people are afraid that they're going to annoy people. And if yes, I mean, you probably know if we're annoying people, they'll tell us and say, stop emailing me or whatever it is, or texting or calling. But we're also like, the more consistent that you are, the more it just shows people this is who I am and I'm consistent. And this is how it will be when you work with me. Or if I'm representing you as a candidate, or if I'm working with you as a client, you can count on me to follow through and be there for you.
I haven't had too many people over the years tell me that I'm bugging them or annoying them. I think it's because they all know on some level that they may need me at some point in time. It's kind of like your realtor. I mean, even though you're not buying a house to them all the time, you like to stay in touch with them, because you never know if you're going to be looking for another house. There are people you do want to stay in contact with, and I think your recruiter or people in the talent acquisition industry that you've worked with in the past are some of those. Plus, not only that, but I think, and you post a lot on LinkedIn, which is great, and I've started posting more. So I think that having that continuation as well, where people remember who we are, is just super, super important.
Yeah, it took me a while to get consistent with LinkedIn. I struggled with it for a long time. And then once I niched and I got consistent, and now I have posts at least every day, weekday. And it's been amazing how I've gone from, because I like cold email outreach and things like that. And in my consulting business, I was getting most of my clients through cold outreach. But then once I got consistent, I get leads all the, like I already got, what is it? It's 10:30. I've already gotten 3 incoming leads today just from posts.
That's great. That's awesome. Another thing too, going back to talking about these different connections, are extensions that are available now to ATSs, and using LinkedIn. I know that the ATS that we have, it took them a long time, but they finally have an extension on LinkedIn. Because I think there's a LinkedIn function called Sales Navigator too.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if the extensions work on that as also, since I've never really worked with it directly.
There's something important about what you just said, though, about Recruiter and Sales Navigator. This I get a lot is recruiting agency owners that they've quit their job, or we're at an agency and they've started their own and they think they need Recruiter. Sales Navigator. Okay, now everybody listen to this. This is important because this blows people's minds. Okay, Recruiter is very expensive. I don't know. How much is it now? How much does Recruiter cost?
Oh, okay. So it is, if you buy just one seat, it's $7,000 now. One seat. And it used to be $4,500.
Okay, and that's annual, $7,000. Okay, so listen to this. Sales Navigator does most of what Recruiter does, and it's $80 a month. So if you're starting out, you likely you can probably do what you think you need to do in Recruiter in Navigator. Recruiters just don't really know that because they're so used to using LinkedIn Recruiter. So if you're just starting out, you might want to ask your ATS and see if they also connect with Navigator. Now, if you have Recruiter, you don't need Navigator.
Yeah.
So like I've worked in Recruiter, solely Recruiter and solely Navigator. Recruiter does have a few more things. Like I think you can reach out to more people. You can do the same functions that you'd need in Navigator. So anyway, that's something that people don't really know, and they'll just assume they need Recruiter, and then realize they've spent $7,000 when they could have done a lot of the same things just by using Sales Navigator. So little known fact.
Good point. No, I know other people who swear by Navigator.
Yeah, people just are so used to using like also Zoom Info. Like I get that all the time. Like, okay, I have Recruiter and Zoom Info. I mean, there's software now, like Apollo does all the same things as Zoom Info plus more, and it's $99 a month. So like new agency owners don't really think like startups, but if you think like startups, and there's a lot of, and sometimes the people will be like, oh, I can't afford a coach. Well, that's like, I would have saved somebody like
a lot of money.
$20,000 or, whatever by just sharing some of these scrappier tools.
Oh yeah. In fact, I've been talking to a couple of people who are starting new software companies, and they don't know how to start a business. I mean, just some of the basic fundamentals of starting a business.
But I think it's important. Like I always believe, I don't believe in like having to know everything about LLC, S-corp, like whatever. I believe in just going out there and getting some business first, because it's not like, otherwise what I see a lot of people doing is they get so paralyzed by that part. Like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to set up an LLC. Like just start your business. I mean, it's not like urgent that you have to have that immediately.
You're right. No, it's not.
Like, get money and start bringing in some money. And then, and I mean, I think I'm different in that way, because I think most people are like, this is how you get set up. And I'm so like, I mean, I started my first temp staffing business. I did not do direct hire first. I just did temp staffing from the get-go. I didn't even know what workers' compensation was, literally. And I had figured it out really quickly. But I went and got clients. I had no idea about margins or any of that stuff. I just figured it out. But first I went and got clients, started placing people. And then, I mean, there's companies that can help you with that kind of thing. And once you have money coming in, you can solve your problems.
Yeah. You were talking about LinkedIn, and we were talking about the whole ATS business. With LinkedIn as well, I think that there are some pieces, like you mentioned, that people aren't aware of. And when you are doing job postings and you are getting resumes and getting business or applicants from job postings, one of the things that our LinkedIn rep had told me a couple of weeks ago is people are still putting up full job descriptions and expecting people to apply online to these full job descriptions. And he said, if you take just a piece of that job description and kind of fluff it up and make it almost look like an ad and draw them into you, he said, because most people, when they look at something that's been sent out, they're actually looking at it on their phone. And so you've got like 2 seconds of their time to capture their attention. So you don't want to be putting a whole position description up there.
Interesting.
So I thought that was super helpful advice that he had given me. And since I've cut it down and I have just a little glimpse, oh my gosh, It has increased the apply to rate.
Really?
Oh, yeah. It's
So then
amazing.
so you tell them we apply and then I'll send you the full job description, or how do you do that?
Well, basically, it's like, hey, what I do is I do a quick little blurb on the company that I'm recruiting for, without giving out the company name, obviously. This is the type of company I'm recruiting for. This is the type of position. But I just give a real quick synopsis of the skills that are required. Please contact me. I'd be happy to send you more information. Boom. It's amazing. It's like tripled the amount of people.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. That's great advice. I mean, yeah, writing job ads is it's a skill. I mean, that's like, you're right. It's marketing, and it's important.
I had a position just recently, and I received this position description from the client, and it was horribly written. So I went to ChatGPT, or not ChatGPT, the other one, Gemini, and I said, hey, here's this position. Please give me a position description. It gives you 3. And so I was able to cut and paste what I wanted and then redo the position description using their skills, their basic skills. But then now if I wanted to add that position description, though, to an ATS, whether I'm a corporate company or I'm an agency, how are we going to incorporate those into an ATS, though, and be able to utilize them? Do we need to get the client's permission? How are we going to, or can we just say that that's kind of an advertisement? Is there going to be some sort of a link there to where we can use our own position descriptions and put them into an ATS? Or do we need to actually get a client's permission first before we start utilizing a new position description that we're creating?
I've never asked for a client approval on the job description I've rewritten. That's it. I just always assume that's like just part of what we do. So I've never actually gone through that process. I usually just rewrite them. But I also, like with ChatGPT, I mean, the prompts are so important. So like with what you're saying, I would say like, rewrite this job description and make it, into a 3 to 5 line, or I might say like a 3-line job advertisement that is going to make it irresistible for somebody that they must click on it. So like I make it like really specific and like and then keep on training it so that it gets to know how you write your job descriptions.
Yeah, I like that. No, and it depends on the client whether or not we have to submit a position description to them for approval. Because I'll tell them, oh, this position description really, it's got a lot of grammar errors, it's got a lot of typos. I'm going to go ahead and redo it. And they'll say, oh, well, before you send it out to anybody, make sure that we approve it. And so I do. But if they don't, then I just use it. I just utilize what I've been using. But I think, though, having just a brief snippet, though, for a posting is super helpful in terms of getting responses.
Right. And like you said, like then ask ChatGPT, give me 7 variations, and I'll kind of Frankenstein and copy and paste and make one thing.
That's one thing. In fact, there was a guy I spoke to on Friday, and he was talking about, here are the reasons that we need to, or here are the benefits, not reasons, the benefits to using either ChatGPT or Gemini for writing position descriptions. And he actually had some pretty compelling remarks around it. And one of them is redundancy bias, writing non-biased position descriptions, because that's another thing too. They're talking about the bias and how many position descriptions are written that are going to be better received by men versus women, and who's going to apply to them. So writing an unbiased position description now is a much bigger conversation, right?
Interesting.
But no, I think it's important, though, a conversation around applicant tracking systems, because again, I think that they are, especially with AI getting all the attention right now, it's kind of the bling in the room for software companies. It's including ChatGPT and Gemini. I think that ATS can't be overlooked or passed over, because it's still kind of the basis, it's still kind of the core of a staffing agency, of a corporate company for their talent acquisition departments.
Yeah. And it's just a little plug for my group, because people, we talk about things like that. And so there's different recruiting agency owners who have all gone through the process and gone through their demos and shows in ATS. So to be in a forum with other founders can be really helpful, especially if we're solo founders or we have a co-founder or whatever. But to talk to other agency owners, that can be really helpful too. And just, also like let other people do the legwork and be like, hey, what did you guys use? Because I mean, there's certain people that I know, they did so much legwork and I'll be like, what are you using? And I'm like, that's fine.
Is there a forum where somebody could, if there's a new agency out there right now who is looking to select an ATS currently? I mean, is there a forum that they can go to?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different coaching groups, and like mine recruiting agency 360. So that we have an online platform, group meets weekly. But there's a bunch of different communities and online communities for agencies, or I mean, whatever you're looking for, really.
Oh yeah. In fact, I've often wondered too, who makes the decision sometimes with the bigger companies. Is it the executives, or is it the people actually in HR and talent acquisition that are demoing the software before they purchase it? Because it seems sometimes working for some of these bigger companies, all of a sudden the talent acquisition team will say, oh yeah, we have to integrate this new software. Nobody asked us our opinion about it first. Have your team try it out first and work with it before you make this huge investment in an applicant tracking system. Because there have been so many people over the years that have complained and groveled afterwards, saying, how come we weren't invited to the table to make a decision about
and
this?
And also look at, like, if you're having issues with your ATS or whatever and thinking about changing, look at the root of the problem and see, like, because sometimes it is that we just don't know, you might not know what all the features are, or it might be a conversation with maybe they have a customer service person in there that is not the right fit. There could be a lot of different reasons. So just before you go and do the whole process and demo and implement, really investigate and find out what the actual problem is before you decide to make a change.
Oh, no, that is such a great point. And I think you made a very valid point earlier, and you just brought it up again. Customer service. How is their customer service? And who is going to be the person you can go to if you do run into a problem? Or you need training on all of the features of an ATS before you think about making switches.
Yeah, you go do all that implementation and then you never hear from them again.
So Diane, if somebody then wanted to get on Recruiting Agency 360 then and kind of be part of that conversation before they want to purchase an ATS, they could get on there and get some opinions of other agency owners.
Oh yeah, everybody loves to give their opinion. But yeah, I have a bunch of agency owners who have, yes, they've done the demos. They can share. Everybody loves to give, share and what's worked for them.
I'll go on there too. Yeah, I'd like to go on there as well. I haven't done it.
So if you go to my LinkedIn, and my website is dianeprince.co. And if you go to my LinkedIn, you can go to dianeprince.co/LinkedIn. All over LinkedIn, but and then there's my custom link is Recruiting Agency 360, and you'll get more information on that.
Well, thank you. I think this is a very great information, and I really appreciate this conversation. I think it's important to have conversations like this because like I said, I think that a lot of these software companies, especially companies that are tied to AI, are getting a lot of attention right now, and don't forget the basics, and applicant tracking systems are still a basic in our industry.
And I'm glad you connected and wanted to talk about this, because I would just say too, like, if things seem complicated but you want to start a business, that it's just figuring out the next piece, and then like don't worry about the whole big picture.
Right.
About a lot of stuff here, just like the next piece, and it could be that your next 90-day goal is just to finding out what's important in an ATS. It doesn't have to be like a whole thing. Take things a little piece by piece.
And you might not need it for a year or so.
You could use a Google spreadsheet, probably.
Yeah, exactly.
For a few months.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, Excel is still there.
I actually do have I do have a tool that's called the Prospect Tracker, and it could be used for candidates or clients, and it's for people who it's in the interim when they're just starting out and they don't have a CRM or an ATS yet. So I have it. It's basically a program, Google spreadsheet. So I post that. I share it for free. It's one of my freebies.
Perfect. Well, Diane, thank you so much for coming on, and we'll have other conversations, definitely. Yeah. It's so nice to know you.
You too, Denise.
All right.
Okay.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.